Hey everyone, thank you so much for all the support. We've hit over 1,000 subscribers on the channel. I can't believe that there are that many people that want to talk to us. It's amazing. I know, it's still early. We're still getting started, but hey, keep spreading the word. We're going to do more content. We're going to do more videos, and we want you to interact with us as much as you can. The Carry Gear store is now open for business. It's another division of Rochester Personal Defense, and it came about because of some requests from clients where they wanted, we talked about certain gear and then they wanted to know where to get a hold of it. And sometimes they don't follow through. So we made it easier to follow through. So we got a bunch of stuff. We're still building the stock up. We're still building the offerings, but we're open for business. We're carrying holsters, belts, cleaning kits, wireless hole puncher fuel, less lethal options, and more. There's going to be more stuff. You can come and get your RPD swag, get some hats and things. And pretty soon, like I said, there's going to be some more stuff. We're also looking for ideas. People local to Rochester, what would you want to see us carry? By the way, the belts we got, they're pretty cool. They're from Core. You're going to like these things. I don't know how we're going to keep them on the rack. Finally, a special thank to all of your patrons on Patreon. Thank you so much for supporting us, for being there for us, helping us out. If you're not subscribed, please join as a free member for early sneak peeks, B-rolls, shout-outs in our videos. Trust me, I make a lot of mistakes on this thing that Ed catches. And especially I want to do some shout-outs to Island Boy for Life, Badass, Ken, not Badass Ken. They're two separate people. Skate-Legged, Bowden, Linda, Austin, Joe, Guns on Wheels, Dave and Linda, thank you so much. Andy, Eric, Marcia, Michael, Andrew, Jay, David, Todd, and Steve. Guys, thank you so much for being supporters and contributing to help us make more content. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Dave. I got Ed here. So we're talking about ammunition today. So what ammo are we going to talk about tonight? Because there's tons out there.
Right. So we're going to have the age-old discussion, age-old for this guy because I'm not that old, but about 9mm versus 45 versus 22 long rifle.
We're going to open up that can of worms.
Well, that's apparently what our listeners want to hear about. So,
okay, 9 versus 45, and then that other one, the 22 LR, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So we're only going to talk about them in regards to pistol ammunition. We'll probably be talking about defensive ammunition versus target ammo. Talk about a couple of different factors. And at the end, I think we'll kind of talk about some of the most popular ones that are on the shelf and kind of give them a rating criteria, which is obviously quite, objective, scientifically proven. And,
absolutely. Follow the science. Oh, wait, I didn't say that.
And, all kinds of stuff. So,
yeah,
we'll talk about that.
Yeah, there's so many charts out there about performance and ammunition and everything. But the problem is that what I found is they're measured in a constant medium that usually isn't as variable as we are. So defensive ammo, they shoot into gelatin, which is all it is a constant media that provides a baseline.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But I've also seen, I've seen YouTube videos of guys who do realistic testing in, he buys like sides of cows and pigs and makes almost like a human torso.
Right.
And then he does testing in those and he gets drastically different results.
Well, I guess it's much easier to get a ballistic dummy than it is to get, like a cow carcass, to shoot.
Probably heads up on the budget. Yeah.
So, yeah, in any case.
All right.
So we'll be talking a little bit about what is the old chart that they used to use, the Taylor knockdown?
There was one, a Taylor knockdown factor chart.
Okay. Yep.
And that, basically what it did is it used, it was basically an infographic. I know there's one training organization out there that uses it. And it just really pretty clearly explains that this cartridge here has this much power and this much kinetic energy, whereas this monster over here has way more. Like if you're trying to shoot little targets, you shoot the little one, right? You take the 22 LR or something,
right?
And you shoot little targets. It's pretty inexpensive. We'll get into that. But if you're trying to stop, like I don't know, a charging rhino or something, then you got to get into that rare, Smith & Wesson 500 or something, right?
Where are you going that you're going to stop a charging rhino with a handgun?
You never know. Do rhinos exist?
In New York?
Well, I saw one in the zoo. He might get angry and try to get out.
Anyway, so the
Yes.
Taylor knockdown power chart.
Yeah.
It's a good representation. It's a little outdated.
Because ballistics have changed.
Ballistics. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Like bullet technology has evolved a little bit, even in the past few years. We've gotten some new ammo out there. But like it's a good standard to start from because it still represents the fact that, the 9mm has a certain amount of power, a 38 has a little more power, a 357 has a little more power. Mm-hmm. So it's still pretty relevant, but I think it could be updated.
Okay. Well, we got a couple of questions from our subscribers that we always get in classes and such regarding ammunition. So number one is how much ammo is too much ammo?
You're asking the wrong guy.
Either to have at home or to, have defensively and such. You hear news articles, occasionally and stuff about so-and-so was found with thousands of rounds of ammo. Now, depending on your purpose, 1,000 rounds of ammo could be a very intensive training weekend.
Or a day.
Or a day, depending. Yeah, you guys are asking the wrong people. But, what would you say is too much ammo? Is there such thing as too much ammo?
There probably is. There's always a such thing as too much. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the top end would be. I'll give you my take on things like this. Okay. I tend to try to train a lot. I try to get to the range as much as I can. And the last thing I want to do on the way to the range is have to stop off and buy a 50 or 100 rounds.
Right.
And that kind of delays my range trip. It's a side quest to get to the range. Mm-hmm. Okay. Whereas if I can have it on hand already and I can have a buffer, then I just grab a few boxes out of my stash and I can go to the range. And then at my next, opportunity, I can replenish that. So before I really got into, a heavy training budget, I usually kept a couple thousand rounds of various calibers based on what I was shooting at that time. Mm-hmm. If I was shooting my rifle, I had a couple thousand rounds of .223. If I was shooting my shotgun, I had at least 1,000 to 1,500 shells. And then 9mm, I definitely had at least a couple cases, 2,000 rounds available to me, just because you never know. I might find that there's this class this weekend that needs 600 rounds, and I look in the closet and I've got 200 rounds. Now I've got to go, I got to make an extra step and get to the store, or I got to order that ammo and get it to me.
Yep. And I don't know, like most of the classes that are out there, not just us, they have a recommended round count, but nobody brings exactly the recommended round count.
Well, not many people bring enough sometimes.
Right. We always say, go 1.5 times as much as, the class is. You could mess up a drill. You could have a malfunction on a timed component, and they'll let you reshoot it. But that means you need extra ammunition.
Need more ammo.
Or, maybe the class is doing really, really well, at an accelerated pace, and the instructor wants to, maybe push your envelope, find that training crest, and such. So he'll incorporate a couple extra drills, and you don't want to miss out on that for lack of ammunition.
Yeah.
You don't want to be that guy.
Yeah. I've had classes where it was budgeted for 600 rounds, and after finding out the level of skill for the students, and it was a 2-day class, I actually emailed them and said, look, I know it's budgeted for 600, but bring 1,000. And I said, I'll promise we'll get to that, and you will get a bonus class. You'll get some more training. And they loved it because we just got more reps in, and I threw some extra drills at them. And to them, it was the best weekend of their lives. And it was fun for me, too. Mm-hmm. So,
and bonus, ammunition that's stored well doesn't really go bad. Like, I'm pretty sure that there is ammunition out there, surplus, mil-spec stuff from before I was born, that's still perfectly, good and well to use. So.
I've had .223 ammo that was made and sealed in the late 70s, and it's still sealed. And I will break it open and shoot it tomorrow if I could.
I don't even think I was a thought in my parents' mind back in the 70s.
You young whippersnappers.
That's a good point. Which actually segues us into the next question that we always ask: how much defensive ammo do you carry on you?
Well, it depends on your capacity gun, doesn't it?
Not in New York, it doesn't.
Well, yeah, if you're maxing out at 10, I can tell you that typically I will have, because we're in the decimal state of New York, and there are other words for New York, but we're not going to do that tonight. I carry 3 to 4 magazines total, so 30 to 40 rounds. I know, studying the FBI officer involved charts and some of the defensive shooting statistics that come out, it's becoming more of a trend where it's a multiple attacker situation. And it is, 3 to 5 rounds minimum per attacker.
Right.
So I don't want to bet that it's going to be 3 to 5 rounds on 2 attackers. I'm out of ammo if I carry 1 magazine.
Right. That's 3 to 5 effective rounds.
Effective rounds, yes. Now the other thing, everybody always thinks, "Oh my God, you had 30 rounds on you. You could have hurt a lot of people." It doesn't. It's not a correlation that works. Especially now, since I told you it might be 3 to 5 effective rounds.
My big thing is that you don't want to be stopping the fight, or you don't want to be in a fight and run out of ammunition. You want to stop the fight because you want to stop it, not because, I ran out and now I'm dry.
Yeah. Oops. Throw the gun at him and see what happens, right?
How much ammo do you want to carry? How long do you want to fight for? Until it's done is preferable. So again, in states that you're limited for magazine capacity, there's no limit to how many magazines you can carry.
Oh, no.
Other than, how tight do you want to cinch your pants?
How much extra weight do you want to put on?
Exactly.
And if you do carry 8 or 10 or 20 extra magazines, stay away from bodies of water instead of boats. Or be able to take your belt off really quick, because that can get heavy. One of the other things, so in all seriousness, everyone, this is what I would recommend. If you're carrying a semi-automatic, even a revolver, but if I'll talk about a semi-automatic, carry at least 1 spare magazine. And here's why. You've experienced this on the range. I know I have. I've seen you run into mag failure. And with proper training, you can get past it. But, the average shooter, the typical shooter, the newer shooter is going to get lost if that magazine doesn't feed the ammo right, or if the ammunition breaks. I've seen people load magazines and gun, and after the first shot, the base plate breaks, and all of their ammo comes flying out of the bottom of the gun.
You can never have too much ammo. I carry a lot of ammo. I don't carry a lot of ammo so I can shoot. I can shoot, but that's not why I carry spare mags. You know why I carry spare mags? In case the magazine in the gun takes a shit. When I was a very young baby cop, I went on a gun call, pulled up, I was all tactical and shit like that, okay? And when I started to get out of the car, seatbelt, keys came out, woo, I'm rocking. Started to get out of the car, it felt like a tug, pulled harder, and my base plate had caught on the steering wheel. So it ripped the base plate off, the spring came out, the follower came out, and all the rounds came out in the front seat. I got out of that police car with the world's most expensive single-shot 1911 fucking pistol.
Yeah. So carry at least 1 spare magazine and see what you got. If you're in a free state and you've got a full-size pistol that has 17 or 20 rounds in it, I would still suggest carrying an extra one, because it's the magazine that could cause problems.
Yep.
Not the ammo.
And then finally, last most popular question we had. Because we're going to be talking about it tonight, the difference between jacketed hollow point and full metal jacket. JHP versus FMJ is probably what you're going to see out there.
Or hollow points or ball ammo. There's a lot of different names for all this stuff.
Right.
Practice ammo versus carry. We can keep it as simple as that. So jacketed hollow point. The reason it's called jacketed hollow point is because it's got a big cavity in the middle, and it's supposed to open up when it hits something of substance.
So it's hollow.
Yeah, it's hollowed. Yeah. Wow. I know. It's like they came up with a new term, a new language. And then full metal jacket is basically there's a metal jacket wrapped all the way around it. So we got the basics out of the way.
Okay.
Okay? All right.
Wait. So which one do you use for which?
Well, so the hollow points are carry. And there's 2 reasons for that. One, the hollow points will expand upon impact and not over-penetrate typically. Okay. So they'll stop in a shorter distance with more effect, more transfer of kinetic energy. A lot of science in this, guys. It's pretty cool. The full metal jacket ones tend to go through more of the target.
Because it's
or
a
more of the
solid
substance.
lead piece.
It doesn't open up. The way I explain it, it's kind of the difference between somebody diving into a swimming pool from the 3-meter board and doing a nice, perfect dive right into the pool. Very little splash, very little external transfer of energy. Eventually they slow down.
Right.
Okay. Or else we'd all be cracking our heads on the bottom of the pool. But the water eventually slows them down.
Right.
Okay. So there is some transfer energy, but it's not immediate. It's gradual.
Got it.
Okay. Compared to a cannonball, or when you watch funny videos, the inopportunistic belly flop. Same idea. They hit the water. More of them is spread out around the surface of the water.
Okay.
And there's an instant transfer of energy.
Right.
Which, if you see people that do like cannonballs, they stop within maybe a foot or so of the
they
surface.
don't go, down to the bottom of the pool.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why when you're carrying for self-defense, you want to carry hollow points, not full metal jacket, because you might endanger somebody else who's not involved in this situation.
Absolutely.
Okay. Whereas, shooting hollow points for your practice, well, if you're independently wealthy, go for it. I can tell you the average hollow point bullet is probably around 80 cents to $1 each. Whereas full metal jacket, typically, especially in the 9mm range, 20 to 30 cents.
But having said that, you should, if you carry on a regular basis or you've never tried your defensive hollow point ammo, you should go to the range and try it at least a couple of times because they do fire a little bit differently and they do feel and sound differently as well. So, we're not saying, again, unless you're independently wealthy and that's all you can get.
Good for you.
Go out, use your target ammunition on a regular basis, but at least a couple times a year, try your target ammo. Make sure it feeds reliably. Make sure you know what it sounds like, what it feels like. And there might be some even differentiation, in the target depending on how you're holding it and managing that recoil. Now that we've exhausted all of the user subscriber questions, let's actually drill down to the different types.
Okay, let's do it.
And let's go from smallest to largest.
Okay.
So 22 long rifle, originally developed as a rifle round, hence long rifle, but now it's a very, very popular training round, great for new shooters, and it's a rimfire pistol ammunition. So
Typically, that's what we use in our basic courses. So the good thing is, like you said, it's very low recoil.
Yep.
Like it's almost none. There is some, but it's very, very mild. Which is great for new shooters because they don't become recoil sensitive right out of the gate.
Yep, absolutely.
A lot of people actually thought, oh my God, I thought this thing recoils more. We show them the cartridges and they're tiny and they think that thing's like a small nuclear bomb and it's going to just blow their hands off, right? But the cost is a big factor because the good thing is if you have a pistol that is a standard caliber or centerfire caliber and you can get the same pistol in a 22, you're training on the same weapon platform, right? But you can train probably 4 to 5 times as much for the same budget.
Absolutely. So you're saying, let's just take a random pistol out there. If you happen to have a Glock 19, but you want to train
didn't it?
with a Glock 44, which shoots 22 LR, but is the same basic ugly frame, same basic ugly action. You can train if you're not comfortable with the larger 9mm, recoil and such on the basic shape, the basic size, with a 22 LR.
There's going to be a weight differential. But, typically there is, unless you go into like a 22 target gun, like a Browning Buckmark or a Ruger,
right?
One of the Mark series are up to like Mark 5 or something now, Mark 4s. Those are pretty chunky, but they're meant to be very stable and have a lot of mass so that the gun doesn't move as much when the cartridge goes off, right? But either way, they're easy to get a new shooter on, and they're cheap to shoot. Because what you can do is you just get a bunch of 22. You get a box of ammo like 200 or 500 for I don't know, $15 maybe. And you just go to the range and you're there for a while getting some good training in or getting some good shooting in, and it didn't break the bank.
But 22 does also have its drawbacks, right?
Yeah.
The stopping power. You know, and I do know that shot placement comes largely into it, but there is a reason that for our classes, we recommend that 9mm or 380 be the lowest caliber, you know, as far as a defensive handgun goes, not a 22.
Yeah. Now, you know, I've talked to different people. I've played with ballistics all of my career here, and I do know that there are some people that believe that the 22 LR is a great carry round, you know, for self-defense. And they do make 22s for self-defense. They make hollow points. Yep. They make soft noses. They make a whole bunch of stuff. And will it do the trick? Probably. I don't want to get shot with one. You know, there's a lot of quality difference in 22s. I've shot some very, very, very high quality 22 ammo. But it starts getting expensive. It gets almost to the cost of 9mm.
Right.
But it's match grade ammo. It's made for a very specific purpose for competition to be very accurate and very reliable. Whereas you can get that, you know, there's a bucket that you can get of, you know, 1,000 rounds of 22 or 2,250 rounds of 22 that 10 to 20% might not even make it out of the barrel. Or if they function at all. So, you know, low quality, low performance. You know, you got to find what your gun likes, what you can afford, and what you can deal with when you're doing practice 22s. That's kind of the way I look at it. But stopping power, 22 doesn't have a lot of stopping power, but I guess one doctor told me a long time ago, a 22 nicking your aorta is the same as a 45 nicking your aorta.
Right.
And you're in trouble.
I mean, if it came down to it, I'd rather somebody carry a 22 defensively than a sharp stick. But I think there are better options out there, and the training gap between 22 and our next caliber is not very large.
Yeah. And it's not that big of a deal.
Having said that, let's go right into it. 9mm.
Right. The 9mm, my favorite, only because, well, it's one of the most prevalent cartridges out there.
I think it might be the most prevalent cartridge out there.
Yeah, well, 380 I think is pretty close. Because
Okay.
380 exists in a whole bunch of different languages in a whole bunch of different worlds. You know, there's like 9 different names for it, I think. Just like the 9mm has a whole bunch of different, different names for it.
You mean the Luger, the 9x19, the Parabellum,
NATO.
Right.
Oh, yeah. There's a whole bunch of other stuff.
So having said that, 9mm,
9.
obviously the most popular one that we're talking about tonight. I would say the most popular as far as gun variety goes for handguns, probably. And, you know, you get a great capacity. I know capacity is less of a factor in, you know, states like ours, but you can carry more than a larger caliber handgun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can, you know, like, so if you take your standard Glock, 19, you mentioned it earlier, the Glock 19, that gun normally is supposed to hold 15 rounds in a normal state.
Right.
Okay. Whereas in New York State, it's down to 10. Okay, got it. I don't need to keep rubbing the salt into one, guys, but I want to let you know, I know, ow, it pains us. All right, so normally 15 rounds. Okay, but the same size gun in a 40, 13 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
So you're down a couple.
Yep.
The same size gun in a 45, I think it's 11. So of course you're trying to cram bigger cartridges in the same space, so there's going to be less of them.
Right.
Right. So in the 9, capacity, well, it doesn't matter. 22 LR semi-automatic pistol is going to have 10. Or 9mm, going to have 10 in New York State.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea that I like about the 9mm is it is one of the most proven rounds in ballistic history.
What does that mean? Proven rounds.
It's got a lot of data behind it that shows that it's a very effective round, and it bridges the gap for a lot of things. It's not a very, very super high pressure round, like a 10 or even a 40.
Right.
It has manageable recoil, but it's also powerful enough to be considered for self-defense, where it is ballistically effective.
Right.
Instead of just let's hope and pray and see what happens.
And I'm guessing that's probably one of the factors, why law enforcement and military organizations use it so much, as well as effectiveness, cost, is probably going to be a lot lower than, any of the 40, 45, calibers. So
Right.
it does have its drawbacks, though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, everything's got its pluses and minuses. But so the drawbacks from your perspective, Ed, what do you see as a drawback on the 9?
So because the 9 is so popular, there is a huge range of manufacturers who make 9mm. Most of them are good, but whenever you have such a large sample size like that, you have a very large range as far as quality and reliability goes as well. So that is something that, again, training, testing out, in order to make sure your ammo is reliable. I probably get my 9mm from only 2, possible 3 manufacturers. And when you're carrying a heavier gun, like, my 1911 in 9, I know we won't have that discussion about 45 ACP.
It's okay. They're accepting you now.
You need a slightly heavier 9mm, that's going to cycle, that handgun. It won't reliably always cycle the 115 grade lightweight light shooters. So as a result, you might need to find something that is more reliable, especially when it comes to defensive calibers. So there's a lot of good, but there's also a lot of bad, and it's kind of one of those Goldilocks things. You're going to have to find your 9mm caliber that works for you.
Yeah. I remember, and I'm sure you do, just a few years ago when we had an ammo shortage or perceived shortage. And it really wasn't a shortage from the manufacturers. It was a shortage on the market because everybody was buying ammo.
Yep. Civilians, police, law enforcement,
the government,
security, government. Yeah, absolutely.
And what happened was people were grasping at whatever 9mm they can get their hands on, both for training and self-defense. And, and in the end, there's some interesting defensive rounds that came out of that time frame. And there's some weird, scary ones that came out of the time frame as well. I don't know what this guy was thinking, but okay. But and like you said, there is a different range among all these people. There were some literally guys that bought 3 reloading presses and were making ammo in their garage and then selling it on the market. And as good as they probably thought they were, or as good as they might have been, they still can't match the computer controlled systems that are coming out of Federal or CCI. Those are, within maybe a 1/10 of 1% tolerance.
Right.
And then I've seen ammo come out. I could pour a bag on there and I could line them all up by size, because one that was shorter, the bullet was in further, and the bullet was barely in the case.
Yep.
It's like, what do we do? Average these out? Where is it supposed to be?
Exactly.
So something we call the overall length of the bullet, the variations are all over the place, and that could actually cause problems in people's guns. So kind of like what you said, I've gravitated towards a couple brands of ammo myself, where it's easy to find, it's fairly inexpensive, but I know it works in my guns.
Absolutely.
And I can trust it during training to be fairly accurate, and even in some, light competitions like the GSSF matches. Okay, I trust that ammo in that, because I know if it hits the plates, it's going to drop them down.
Yep.
If I'm aiming for the center of the cardboard, I'm going to be relatively close to the center of the cardboard, as long as I don't screw it up like I did in the last match. I'll admit, I screwed up a couple of them. So be careful about your ammo. Choose your ammo. Find the ammo that works in your gun, whether it's, so you mentioned a number, the 115 grain. That's a weight of the bullet.
Yep.
Okay. There's also 124 grain, which is a little heavier. There's also 147 for 9mm. And I'm hearing in some competition circles, there's a whole lot of other ones up in that range.
Right.
And so they're just building different weight ammo. And the one thing I found is, the 115 is your utilitarian round.
Okay.
That's your go-to. Okay.
His go-to, not my go-to.
Well, it's like everybody calls it like the standard. That's the like the most prevalent 9mm weight bullet.
Yep.
Okay. I've actually moved into 124s, and in some cases 147s on the full metal jacket because I want the stability, but there's also a little more mass-induced recoil, which means some of the bigger slide Glocks are, the slides are going to move and there's going to be a better recoil. It's going to be a little snappier, meaning the slide speed's faster.
Right.
Which means the gun's ready to shoot and I'm back on target faster.
Now, it's going to take you guys a while for most of our listeners to notice the difference between 115 grain versus 124 versus 147. Dave could probably hold 2 different 9mm and be able to tell
I could
the
look at
difference.
them and tell the difference.
But
I
it's gonna take a little while for you guys to go out there. But know when you're purchasing ammo that between 2 different manufacturers, if you go from one grain versus another, you might have some differences as far as felt recoil or the ability for the gun to cycle in some situations.
And that could affect your point of aim up or down as well.
Absolutely.
Probably not side to side, but it will affect your group size and your aim up and down because if it's coming out a little hotter, it might hit a little higher. So it's got less ballistic drop. We're getting pretty sciencey here.
125 grain, 1425 feet per second. Serious business.
And speaking of the hottest, ammo that we have on this list today,
Drum, 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 roll. Boom!
the 45 ACP, the 45 automatic Colt pistol round.
AKA God's caliber, AKA it won a war apparently. Or at least it shot down a plane during one war. That's one claim.
The 9mm 45 ACP argument debate has been going on for as long as guns have probably been around and the rounds have been around. But obviously 45 ACP, what are some of the pros about it?
Well, I won't argue that it will have some more stopping power.
Okay.
It's a bigger bullet. The typical 45 can be anywhere from 165 grains on the low end to almost 300 grains on the high end. That's a big bullet. In the middle, what I've seen and what I've shot has been 230 grain round nose, which is a full metal jacket. And then for carry, I've had 185 and also I think it was a 215 or 225, somewhere in there. It's just over 200 grain hollow points. And I'll tell you, they still command a little bit of respect.
I'd say they command a lot of respect from people who carry 45 ACP, especially if you're in a limited capacity state. They are out there like New York. If you're concerned about stopping power, if you're limited to just holding 10 rounds, and capacity and stopping power is all you care about, 10 rounds of 45 ACP versus 10 rounds of 9mm versus 10 rounds of 22 LR. Pound for pound, 10 rounds of 45 ACP is going to have the greatest stopping power.
Yeah, overall, it's going to have it. It's like I said, I'm not going to argue. It does have some stopping power. I've done some ballistic testing myself with all the different calibers. I've also done some skill testing just to see, am I faster with one? Am I more effective with another? And how are my skills with a 9mm or 40 or 45 or even a 357?
Absolutely.
And personally, I found that I'm very efficient in the 9mm range, so that's where I stay. I have certain factors that I want to maintain. I have something that I call time on target. And I want to be able to get the gun back on target faster to be able to put more holes in the target than having time off target and fighting more recoil.
Right. Absolutely.
But, if you told me today, Ed, hey, Dave, you got to carry 45 tomorrow. All right. Because I ain't afraid of it. I'll do it. But if you gave me my preference, I would prefer the 9. But that's just me.
Absolutely. And I think all of these calibers on this list, everybody should try shooting at least once, know what it feels like so there aren't any surprises. And then, try it out, see what you prefer, and pound for pound, see what's available. There's no guarantee that in a defensive situation, in a gunfight, you'll always be shooting your gun or your caliber or your Goldilocks, ammunition. And such. So I would say train to see what else is out there in a real life situation.
Yeah. But the 45, it was, the 1911 gun was built around, well, actually, I think the 45 was built to handle the 1911 gun, but I think they all came about the same time. Mm-hmm. I know they had 45 long Colt at one point, but that's a revolver round. There was another variation. But the 45, actually, it just came prepackaged in its own delivery system that, I'll be honest, is very cool. It's got some style to it. Mm-hmm. It's got some simplicity to it. When John Browning made it, he didn't want to make it very complicated, right? But still, it like every gun, it's got its limitations.
It's won 2 world wars. So
well, that's the rumor.
So
I know. I've seen the picture of the guy in the parachute pointing a 45 on an airplane, and supposedly, so many airplanes went out, and so many airplanes came back -1. So people could interpret that maybe that pilot who was in the parachute shot the pilot in the plane.
2 world wars. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm gonna say.
There you go. You can say that. And I do know that there are some units and some police departments that still carry a 45 ACP chamber gun, mm-hmm. and in some cases a 1911. Mm-hmm. So it's still a viable platform.
But for all of its pluses, and our fanboying, it does come at a price, which ironically is the price.
Yeah, it's the price. Most of your good 45 pistols are going to be more expensive.
Absolutely.
The ammo is going to be probably 20 to 30% more than 9mm, if not more.
For the defensive ammo, it's absolutely going to be at least 30%.
Yeah. I think we said earlier that average 9mm is probably 80 cents to $1 a round. Mm-hmm. Whereas I believe the last time I priced out 45 ammo was probably near $1.50 a round or a little more.
Yep.
So it's only because of the raw materials. There's a lot more material in that sucker.
And speaking of more materials, this could be a downside or an upside depending on how you see it. The guns that shoot a 45 generally are a little bit bigger, a little bit bulkier, and a little larger. Everything is built a little bit bigger, to handle the 45. The 1911 standard, GI original model 1, is a big kind of chunky boy.
It is. And what did it weigh, like 2.5 pounds almost?
Right. Exactly.
It was heavy, but it needed to be.
Yeah, it had to win 2 world wars. So
it had to last that long, right?
Yeah.
It had to have some longevity.
Absolutely.
Well, the other thing is, since 9 tends to be a little more popular, what do you think the manufacturers make more of? Probably the 9mm.
It's got to be the 9.
So 45 might not be readily available compared to the 9. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's not available. I could look on 3 of my ammo suppliers right now and probably find 9mm.
I was going to say.
And 45, pretty available. I don't think it'll be a problem.
Walk into your big box store, and I guarantee they're going to have 5 shelves of 9mm and maybe 3 shelves of 45, just the way they have it set up.
Oh yeah. And the biggest thing, again, I mentioned 9mm is fairly manageable for the recoil. 45s are going to take a little bit more work. Not a lot, but a little bit more work to manage.
Absolutely.
You have to be engaged with the gun. You have to have a good grip, a good stance, good body position, good fundamentals. I've seen guys who knew that gun well and were really locked in, and the slide just looks like it's going back and forth with very little upwards recoil. And it's just amazing. I can't imagine what those guys would look like shooting a 9. It would just be like a high-speed sewing machine or a tattoo machine. It's like tick, tick, tick. But recoil, there's going to be more recoil. And we can't not tell people that there's going to be more recoil in a 45 because there is going to be.
It's a bigger round. It's a bigger bullet. Yeah. There is more powder, and it's a larger case. So everything is bigger. It's multiply that factor by several thousand for the grain weight and the speed.
Yeah. Well, if you really think about it, it's a bigger bullet. It's also using a bigger primer. So there's initially right out of the gate, there's a bigger flame happening to burn the bigger amount of powder to get the big fat bullet to go down the big fat barrel. I'm not picking on the 45. Believe me, I do appreciate them. I like them. But again, I said I prefer the 9 based on my criteria. But I'll tell you, it's people that carry 45 and shoot it well, I give them respect.
Absolutely.
I do. When I see somebody shooting a 9mm 1911, I'm like, okay, I get it. You want the look of the 1911, but you don't want to spend all that money and have all that recoil and beat your gun up that much. It's just different flavors for everybody. That's what I like. So, yeah. So 22, low recoil, low cost, right? Easy to get, easy to find. You could probably find 22s everywhere.
Yep.
Okay. But on the other end, it might have some functioning reliability issues for concealed carry or, defensive settings. Probably not the stopping power you want. You have to be really accurate and really good. And then, you just got to be on your game and probably a lot closer to the target. And then the middle, you got the 9mm.
Yep, the Goldilocks cartridge.
Yeah,
good
pretty much.
for defensive, good for training. The ballistics are really kind of getting up there, in order to match, some of the larger calibers, but without the added recoil. It's a zippy little, cartridge comparative to speed of larger calibers. You're going to find a lot of guns that are chambered for the 9mm. However, that does come with the downside of everybody's going to want 9mm ammo. Everybody's going to be making 9mm ammo, meaning there's a much larger range of, quality control, and such. So, keep that in mind.
So if you're going to get into a 9mm, get more ammo than you think you need. Just saying. It's popular. People want it. And then
finally, 45
45.
The big Papa Bear.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking, you know what? I got some range time coming up this weekend. I might have to crack one of them out. Might have to bring the Kimber out of its hidey hole in the safe, just because. But yeah, the 45s, cartridge that commands a little bit of respect or a lot of respect, and that's, I consider, kind of a side note on the delivery platform, the 1911. I consider the 1911 to be an intermediate level to advanced level shooter's gun because of how it needs to be operated. You got to have your what together.
Yep.
It's just not a beginner's gun, although beginners could shoot it. But if you're going to carry it, you should probably have quite a bit of training under your belt. So that's just my side.
There's a lot more to it.
Oh yeah. But the 45, yeah, it's got some stopping power. It's very reliable. It'll work whatever it'll hurt whatever it hits. Absolutely.
Whatever it hits is going to stay a hit.
Yeah,
so.
That's right. Like those plates, they're going down with some authority rather than just kind of thinking about it on the way down. Cost is going to be a little more for the ammo, probably a little more for the guns. Weight factor is going to be a little more. Carrying that 1,000 rounds of 45 out of the store is going to take, it's near 40 pounds.
You're going to need a cart for that
maybe
one.
more. And then recoil, you're going to feel a little more recoil out of it. So there's some balancing acts you got to look at, people.
Try them all. I would say train with all of them. Know what they feel like. There's nothing worse than somebody who's offering their opinions, on different types of ammo without ever having shot it. We've put hundreds of thousands of rounds of each. Downrange, we tried with them all, and that's why we can reliably speak to which ones work and which ones don't. And, our last section that we're going to get into is probably the one that very core group of our listeners and subscribers have probably been waiting for. So, guys, as far as ammo recommendations go, we have 3 brands of defensive ammo and 3 brands of target ammo, which we'll briefly talk about. And we'll just kind of grade. One is going to be A+, one's going to be B, one's going to be C, just in our experience, right? So, first one, talking about target ammo, right?
All right, target ammo. Let's start there. Yep.
All right. Blazer brass.
Blazer brass.
You've seen that black box with the copper cartridges, on them. They are everywhere. They're used by students. They're used by instructors. I've seen them feed through. Well, a Glock will eat just about anything. But it's one of the most popular training full metal jacket ammos out there.
It is. Yeah, so for years that was my go-to.
Okay.
I saw Blazer Brass on sale, or I saw where if I needed ammo, that's what I got. I got the 124, 115 grain, whatever they had. Especially a few years ago, if I saw it, I grabbed it up. And the Blazer Brass has evolved over the years. It used to be not really good when it first came out, from my perspective.
Okay.
Guys, this is not any other judgment call. This is my perspective. Okay, I'm speaking from experience that I've had with these. In fact, everything on our list I've got experience with. And the Blazer Brass, when it first came out, it just seemed like it was variable in its power. And I got some jacket separation on quite a few rounds, like more than I was comfortable with. So for a while, I stopped shooting it and I shot some other stuff. I actually went to another one on our list for a while. Okay. And then when I came back to it by accident because somebody handed me a box, I'm like, well, I gotta keep shooting. I'm gonna try it. It actually shot better. And it had been a few years. So there was a gap in there that something was going on. I don't know what it was. But it was quite a few years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, we're probably talking 10 to 12 years ago.
So better now than it was back then.
Oh yeah, I'd buy it. I'd buy 1,000 right now and go out and shoot it tomorrow.
Gotcha.
I wouldn't hesitate at all. The Blazer Brass and 9 I've got experience with 40 and 45, and even actually some of the revolver cartridges I've got experience with, and I've been pleased with them all.
Okay.
I'm good with it. The price point for Blazer Brass is decent.
Yes.
I've shot the aluminum Blazer. Okay, it works in a pinch, but if I had my choice and they were both sitting on the shelf and there was like a buck or two difference, I'm going to get the Blazer Brass.
Okay. So what would you rate Blazer Brass as far as A, B, or C?
Well, compared to our other ones, I'll give that an A.
Okay.
I'll give that an A. We'll start right at the top of the chart.
Okay. So the other one that we're going to move down to our list, Remington, specifically Remington UMC.
The UMC, the Remington, yeah. Well, you give your experience with the Remington.
I don't like them.
Okay. Well, there we go.
I see that green and white box, and
you just kind of recoil a little bit.
Kind of steer away from it, again, based upon our experience and such. But again, I do also like shooting a lot of steel guns, a lot of heavier guns. And I find the Remington UMC, even, with the different grain weights, it doesn't quite cycle as reliably as I would like it to be. I find out of 100 rounds, maybe 5, in worst boxes 10, either was stovepiping, or it failed to eject, or, sometimes it had a failure to fire. And I don't want that to be the case, in a defensive type of situation. Even in practice, it's a little bit embarrassing, and such. So I see the big buckets, of 500 rounds or 250 rounds and stuff.
The
and
bulk pack.
I tend to steer away from that personally. But again, that's just me.
So the Remington UMC, I've had the experience to shoot quite a bit of it, and I've found, so if I use a comparison, we just talked about Blazer Brass. So if I compare it to the Blazer Brass, it feels like we call it a little softer on the recoil. Whereas like something that has a lot of recoil, we say it's a hotter load.
Yep.
This is milder. The Remington seems to be milder. My experience in my guns has been that it seems dirtier. I can shoot 100 rounds of Blazer Brass. I'll have some residue. Okay. It'll be, not a tiny bit, but there'll be some residue. There'll be some small flakes of jacket, small flakes of brass, and then that black, nice carbon stuff that builds up. It's the initial stuff that's great, and then it gets worse, right? But on the Remington, after 100 rounds, this thing just looks like pitch black. I can see it. I can see the residue on the outside of the gun or on the muzzle. So it's just definitely got it's obviously a different powder compound. It burns differently. I equate it with like Blazer Brass tends to have a little bit of a sharp hit, whereas this one kind of a little softer recoil impulse.
And that's probably why the heavier 9mm have a little bit harder of a time cycling that full metal slide as a result. I mean, with polymer guns, like the Glock, you're going to have less of an issue. But if you are shooting, high powers, or you're shooting 1911s or 2011s or whatever it might be, this might be a problem for you.
Yeah. I can probably guarantee, based on my experience running like my Gen 517 or my 34, okay, that the UMC will probably not function reliably in the 34 or even even in the 17.
Okay.
Just based on my experience with it.
Well, they are longer slides. There's more metal and more meat to them. So.
Yep. So again, if somebody handed me a box at a match and said, "Here, you're gonna have to shoot this," I'll make it work. I'll deal with it. You know, I'm not gonna turn it down.
Right.
But if I had my choice between the two right now, I'd give me the Blazer Brass and you can keep the Remington on the shelf.
So I'm guessing Remington UMC is probably going to get like a C minus.
That's my C.
Okay.
That's my C.
All right. And then let's go to the last one on the list for our target ammunition. So
the Winchester.
we just wrote Winchester, but like Winchester kind of accompanies a lot.
There's a lot of different target ammo for Winchester.
Yeah.
You know, there's different levels and different grades.
Okay.
All right. So the one I'm most familiar with, we used to call it the Winchester White Box, WWB.
Okay.
And that was the one you get the 100-round value pack at Walmart. Okay, they used to sell ammo, guys. Some of them still do. But you had that 100-round little pudgy little box, right, that you could pick up for about $20. Mm-hmm. And it was great because you look at the 50 rounds and you add up two of those and it's more expensive than buying that 100-round value pack.
Right.
And I remember going into Walmart when there was no limit. I'm like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Give me this.
Just take the whole
Just clean the shelf up. I'm dragging the cart up, you know, and the clerk's like, "You can't take all that." And I'm like, "Well, there's no sign that says I can't." Okay. That was years ago. In fact, I can guarantee you, I still have some of that Winchester White Box stashed away. The good thing is I've got it stored properly. I threw a couple desk pants in the bottom, couple on top, sealed up in the ammo can, put it away in a nice cool dry area. I'll pick that stuff up and I'll shoot it tomorrow. It's fine. Right. But the Winchester White Box stuff was usually cleaner. Although at times I would find batches that wouldn't run my gun very well.
Okay.
So it was kind of like good, and then it wasn't. Then it was good again. And then it wasn't. Then it was good again.
So quality control, depending on the year, it might have not been a great vintage.
Or it could have been the plant that made it. You know, I'm sure it wasn't made all in one spot.
Right. Yep.
It's probably made in, 4 different places, and then maybe that plant that day had a couple issues with the machinery, and they didn't catch it until they all went out the door, and then they fixed it.
Gotcha.
Okay, so I might have gotten that weird box once in a while. What's your experience with the Winchester?
So Winchester, for me, white box is actually a different white box. I'm thinking the white box of Winchester NATO rounds.
Okay, yep.
Or if you've seen the red, white, and blue, the what is
Winchester
it called?
USA, maybe?
Yes, USA or Patriot or something like that. And the reason I like it is because generally it's a heavier round. It's a hotter round, and that reliably cycles through my 2011s, my 1911s that are chambered for 9mm.
Well, you mentioned something important.
What's that?
You called it NATO.
Yes.
Because it's made to specific specifications.
Yes.
Which are better than the standard 115 grain.
Right. Furthermore, the 9mm NATO Winchester NATO was also designed to be used and cycle reliably in pistol caliber carbines.
Yep.
As a result. So again, hotter round, than your standard 9mm, but I find it cycles constantly and very, very reliably in heavier guns or guns that need a little bit of a break-in period. Kimbers, are wound so tight. I would say until you put a couple hundred rounds down range, it's not gonna always put your target's shots where you want them to be.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I know what you meant with that. I've shot some of that, and I guess you could call that the true white box, because it's in when you find it in the bulk cases, it's all a white box with black lettering.
Absolutely.
Whereas the ones that I was talking about, it's got like the red label on it. And
Valor ammo. That's what it was called.
Winchester Valor.
Yes.
Okay. Yep. So there's a couple different levels. Obviously, that one was made to NATO spec, which is similar. It's similar actually the stuff that I shoot now. I kind of still have some Blazer Brass, but I've moved into a new one, and I've probably shot 8,000 or 10,000 rounds of it, and I'm very impressed with it. But it's 115 and it's 124, both made to NATO spec. Even though the 115 isn't the NATO round,
right?
They still make it to the same specs, and so it's a little hotter. It runs my guns so much better, but I'm still sticking with that 124. So the Winchester.
So we'll put an average on it. Your
Okay.
white box, old
Yeah.
school white box versus new school white box. We mash them together.
Mix them together, and we get our B.
Okay.
I give it a B.
I would even give it a B plus. You know, that NATO brings it up just a little bit.
I figure we needed an A, we need a B, we need a C. So the Winchester's going to be the B.
Okay.
Only because, and here's my experience with the Winchester. It is a little cleaner, almost as clean as the Blazer Brass. Okay. And you can always, it's funny, it's like you go to the range, we know ammo so much, we can usually tell when people are shooting like wolf ammo by the smell.
Oh, the Eastern European stuff?
Yeah. And I can usually tell when people are shooting like that Remington UMC, the green box stuff. Right? And when they're shooting Blazer Brass, it has a different, distinct smell to it. I'm not saying you guys should like go around and smell people when they're shooting. That's creepy. But I've noticed that it does have a distinct difference in the odor of the ammo. And it's just the compounds. It's just how they're burning it. It could be the primer compound or whatever. But the Winchester seems to burn pretty well. It's got decent recoil, decent burn rate. It's not too sharp, but it's not mild where it won't run things. So, you know, like I'd put it right behind that Blazer. Right behind the Blazer Brass.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what? Yeah, I give it a B plus. I'll bump it up a little bit.
Guys, these are just 3 of the popular target brands.
Yeah.
You know, we want to know what you guys shoot. If you have specific brands that we haven't mentioned, let us know in the comments below.
So here's a quick aside. You know what? We haven't been to the range in this yet, so we got to do some range work soon. How about we get some baseline criteria to test different ammo on?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, let's test it on. You know, we'll get a chronograph.
Okay.
You know, and we'll get some, you know, targets. We'll do some long range accuracy, some short range stuff, functionality. We'll see if we can get a feel on it. We'll play with a little bit. So if you guys want to suggest an ammo to test out, throw it to us, you know, and then we'll pick up a box of it or a couple boxes, and
This will be a video for the making of the future. So stay tuned.
Yeah, you guys can help influence the next one. Well, our last segment, probably, unless we come up with something else we want to talk about ammo that pops into our heads, defensive ammo.
Yep.
Okay. Everybody asks, what do I carry in my gun? What kind of defensive ammo should I get? My answer is, I don't know. But I can tell you some ideas.
Okay.
And that's
What
how
do
I
you-
approach it.
What do you carry in your gun?
I carry Federal HST, 124 grain or 147 grain, depending on the gun.
All right.
In my Glock 19 Gen 5 with the dot on it, that's my primary carry mostly for now. I will alternate. Sometimes I'll run 147 grain through it. It loves it. It hits well. It functions well. It's a little heavier bullet, but you know what? That's okay. And then the 124 grain plus P works very well. Like the results are nearly identical out of that gun. So I don't care whatever is right now. I believe it's the 124 plus P in the gun right now.
Okay.
I haven't changed it because I didn't buy a lot of 147.
Federal is probably one of the largest ammo manufacturer companies just in general, but the HST I know has been used in a number of federal organizations for defensive calibers. Extremely reliable. It's got a great reputation, and it's got a long history of being used. So there's a lot of ballistic data on that particular defensive round.
I'll tell you what sold me. I was carrying Hydroshocks before the Federal HST.
Okay.
And the HST was supposed to replace the Hydroshocks. And why did I carry the Hydroshocks? Well, I learned a long time ago that if it's good enough for the local police department, the largest law enforcement agency in my area to carry, because they've done the testing, they've done the vetting, they can back it up. Why wouldn't it be good enough for me?
Yep.
Right? So if my police department carries it, how can I be accused of carrying a more deadly bullet? The police department has it.
Yep.
Okay. I actually got invited to a demo that they were comparing a bunch of ammo because they were looking to select a new cartridge. And I happened to know the trainer at the time, and he called me over, and I was able to participate and watch a lot of demonstrations, a whole day long thing. By the end of the day, I went up to the rep and I'm like, how can I get a hold of some of that HST? And he goes, I got a truck out back. How much you want?
Oh, the old days when you could just
Yeah,
ammo
I
like
wasn't
that.
greedy that day, but I did come home with about 500 rounds of it. And I was sold after I saw how it performed through windshield, through to car doors, through heavy denim and heavy Carhartt and heavy leather and drywall medium. They tested it through everything that they could think of. And it did considerably well compared to the Hydroshock. Mm-hmm. And I was sold. And I'm like, that's my carry ammo right there. And again, same concept. If you guys are going to select it, I'm going to carry it.
So in case it wasn't obvious to our listeners, I'm going to guess that you rate the Federal HST pretty high.
How could you guess? Yeah, that's got the A right there. It's got one of these too. Yeah.
So moving on to
Or how do you do it like this? I don't know. I can't remember.
Boy. Next one on the list, in case. So
Does that work? There we go. Now it's an upside down heart. Okay.
yes, that's a very nice target.
Yeah. It's been one of those days, Ed.
Spear Gold Dot, number 2 on our defensive ammo
Okay.
list.
Well, you
Okay?
didn't talk about your experience with some Federal HST. Do you carry? Do you shoot it? Have you shot it?
I have shot it.
Okay.
I have not run it through my
Okay.
staccatos at all. My experience with HST was through, yes, I do shoot Glocks. They work through Glocks. They work through my SIGs actually pretty well.
They do.
And the thing is, the SIG, my SIGs are all metal SIGs. So they are heavier and they have their heavier slide, but they've never had a problem running it. And the thing is, they don't feel snappier. That's the thing.
No.
I thought that shooting HST versus my standard 9mm ball ammunition there'd be a significant difference initially, when I started carrying HST, but it really wasn't. Maybe
Yeah.
it was because it was a heavier gun, but the difference in recoil and power for me personally was negligible.
Yeah.
So, yes, I agree with your A rating.
All right. Spear Gold Dot.
Spear Gold Dot.
There used to be a name for it. What was it? Oh, the flying ashtray.
Oh my goodness.
Was that it? The 45? Because of the way it opened up, and when it hit the medium, it would just literally open up into a disc with saw blades on the end of it, or saw teeth.
Somebody made the comparison that it was, Spear Gold Dot, feels like you've been hit by a sledgehammer versus any other defensive type of ammunition. It feels like you were hit with a baseball bat. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't want to be hit with either, but apparently that's the difference. It's heavier. I find that it was snappier for me personally.
Yeah.
And again, differences between two different types of defensive ammunition. For the average shooter or listener, you might not feel it or know it. But Spear Gold Dot, I thought it was snappier and I couldn't come down on target quite as fast. And we're talking hundredths or thousandths of a second, in order to do so. But again, noticeable.
Yep. I've shot it. That was one of the first, when I went through a phase of carrying one of my 45s, I carried Spear Gold Dot in it.
Okay.
Because that was the recommended round for that gun. It was very popular for that. A lot of people that I worked with, a lot of people that I had, had some influence with, and they had influence on me, said that, yeah, the Spear Gold Dot is the one you want to carry in 45. I'm like, okay, well, I'll give it a try. I went out, I did the testing for it. I was very impressed with it. And I'll agree, that thing had it commanded respect. It didn't get respect. When it went off, it went, respect me now. Yep. Like it was like some guy with a really deep voice going, boom. And, in the testing, and I watched some gelatin testing, I was just amazed at how that thing hit. And I wasn't kidding about the buzzsaw thing. Mm-hmm. When you watch high-speed video and you watch it at slow speed, that thing hits and it just goes, bzzz, it's almost like carving a hole through the gelatin.
Yep.
And that's where it became the flying ashtray, but it had sharp edges around it. It just spun right into it. But the Spear Gold Dot was fine. I honestly never really had a problem with it. Except for when I went to a 9, I tried it originally before I went to the Federal line. And I started having a lot of feeding problems with the Spear because of its it has a more open cavity than compressed.
So ballistics and dynamics probably factor into that just a little bit. That's interesting. I just like the fact that you can hear somebody shooting a spear gold dot.
Oh, yeah.
When you're testing out defensive ammo, like you'll hear bang, 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 boom.
Yeah.
And you'll hear it. You'll notice it.
Yeah, well, I think the spear was getting driven pretty quick, too. So obviously, a little more power, higher burning rate to get that bullet going a lot faster, produces a significantly different sound signature.
Yep.
Yeah, like the Federal HT, you hear it. The spear gold dot, you notice it.
So
even in 9, it had some respect coming out of that muzzle.
So a hotter ammunition, it might be for you. In our experience, probably not performing as well as the Federal HST, but again, that's just based on our
I walked away from it because of the feeding issues. I couldn't trust it.
Yep.
I probably still have some. I'll bet you I've got some in my stash still.
Okay.
At one point, I found some 45, some 357 in a 250 round bulk pack that was being offered for training for law enforcement, but it was released to the public, and it was kind of cool because it was just, you just reach in and you just pick up a bunch of those flying ashtrays and, you just feed it. A friend of mine ran it. He ran it fine, but for some reason in my guns, what was I shooting at the time? It was early on my Glock carry career, but I had a couple other guns. I had a CZ that I was carrying, and God, I remember the other one. I've since sold that one. I don't remember my fourth gun. You always remember your first, Ed. The Glock 17 was, no, actually, mine was the Taurus PT100. Anyways, but yeah, the spear, it performed well, but it had to be launched well.
Yep.
And if it didn't get into the firing chamber correctly, I just couldn't trust it. I didn't want to have to deal with that. So that's why I backed off of that, went into the Federal.
So your mileage may be different than ours,
Yep.
but we're probably going to put this in, we're going to give it a C, maybe a C+.
I would say because of my feeding issues, my personal rating is going to be a C.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yep. Every other factor, I would probably put it right almost close to that Federal HST.
I'd agree.
All right.
Absolutely.
So what's our last one, Ed?
Last one is the one that I actually carry for my defensive ammunition, and it's Hornady Critical Defense.
I know a lot of people that carry it. I don't have a lot of experience with it. I've shot it, but I don't have a ton of carry experience or where I've done the testing on it. And actually I should, because we're probably going to carry it in the carry gear store.
Yep.
Because we're going to get a lot of requests for it. So I should be familiar with it.
So I like it, and I can say probably hundreds of rounds placed downrange, and I have never had a feeding issue. I have never had a reliability issue, no failures to eject, even with heavier slide guns, SIGs, 1911s, 2011s. They all feed very, very reliably, and those shots are very consistent. The only drawback, I would say, if there was a drawback to it, is the cost. You are paying a little bit extra because it is Hornady. They have a very, very, very good quality control.
Yeah.
They make rifle rounds, they make shotgun rounds, they make pistol rounds, and their critical defensive stuff, is really good.
Goes back to what I tell people on gun selection. What's your life worth?
Exactly. Absolutely.
What are you willing to trust your life to? That $300 it might work gun, or the $600 it's been proven to work gun, or the $1,100 it'll darn well work gun.
There's
Same thing for ammo.
$1,100 Glock.
Well, I'm sure there is somewhere. I was kind of giving you the opening.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
But the on the ammo, same thing. It's like, what's your budget allow you to use, and what's your life worth? As I said earlier, the good thing is you don't have to buy a lot of carry ammo. For somebody who's got their first gun and they want to carry, 100 rounds is going to be probably good.
Absolutely.
Right? Don't just buy that one box of 20 or that one box of 40. Get about 100 rounds so you can test it and have some backup.
It's a nice round number too. Nobody.
Yeah, 100. It's got a couple of round ones in there. Yeah, everybody loves $100 bills. They love that number. So the Hornady Critical Defense, from my experience and from the my little experience with it, I've read about it, I've seen it, but I don't recall ever having shot any of the critical defense. I might have on a gun test on somebody, here, try my gun out with this stuff, see if it feeds, but I couldn't tell you if it was it. But I will change that. But based on feedback from people like you and other shooters that I know and I trust their judgment, and other trainers that I know that carry it and trust their judgment, if I couldn't carry the HST, I got a feeling I'd be carrying the critical defense.
I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
It will change your life.
So based on that, I'm going to put that at a B. And I don't have any personal experience with it.
So I would, as much as I love it, and it is my carry ammunition, I would put it at a B just for 2 factors, and they're small ones. Price, it is more expensive, and availability. It is not going to be you're not going to see shelves and shelves of it in your big box stores. You might have to order it special. You might have to get it, sent to your FFL, wherever, it might be. It's a little harder to find. But again, if you can find it, I would get it.
Yeah. So gang, you've got our thoughts. Again, they're just our thoughts based on our experience. Honestly, if you have ammo that you like in your gun and it runs for you, okay, keep doing that. If it works for you, why change it? But don't just keep being stuck with the same one. Give another ammo a try. And if it doesn't measure up, okay, you tried. If it measures up better, guess what? Maybe you can evolve a little bit.
Or if your gun is not reliably cycling ammunition just because it's all you've been shooting, try one of these other brands and let us know what you think. Did it work for you? Did it not work for you? Even amongst the same manufacturer, a Glock 17 may not run ammunition as, good as a Glock 19 or a 34 or, any of the other.
Or even cross manufacturers. Your 2011 will probably run something different than the Glock 19 would.
Absolutely.
Right.
In a far superior way.
Oh yeah.
One
of course
two
it will.
worlds worse.
Not the 9mm version. Don't try to stretch that one. So Ed, what do you want to leave with the folks that tuned in again?
So guys, if you liked this episode, be sure to comment, like, subscribe, check out our Patreon. If you want to see us test, a specific type of ammunition that we did not mention, but you want to know more about, let us know. We'll go out and buy it and we'll do a test on it and see and let you know, how it runs for you.
Yeah.
And
we'll
then
compile another episode of like 2 or 3 ammo tests.
Absolutely. And I know already we're in the works of making a part 2 because this was strictly for semi-automatics, but we got a lot of requests for revolver ammunition and what is coming down the pipe for that.
That would be something Matt would want to do. He's more of a revolver guy than I am.
Absolutely. So keep an eye out for that, guys. Any final thoughts, Dave?
Guys, thanks for tuning in again, and keep spreading the word about Match Grade Podcast, and give us some ideas of what you'd like to see us do. You want to do a review on something? You want to have another debate, like probably not as epic as the 9mm versus 45 debate, but hey, you never know.
2 world wars, guys. 2 world wars.
Other than that, guys, thank you so much. And again, thank you for supporting us, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.